What happens when a country music superstar finds himself backed into a corner by relentless questioning, and the cameras are rolling live on national television? Well, you're about to witness one of the most shocking moments in Good Morning America history, where Blake Shelton absolutely loses his cool in a way nobody saw coming. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below, because this story gets more intense with every passing minute. It was supposed to be a routine morning show appearance. Blake Shelton had rolled into the Good Morning America studios, expecting the usual softball questions about his latest album, maybe some banter about The Voice, perhaps a few laughs about his relationship with Gwen Stefani. What he got instead was Michael Strahan in full journalist mode, armed with questions that would make even the most seasoned politicians squirm. The interview started innocently enough. Blake settled into the familiar studio chair, that trademark grin plastered across his face as the cameras began rolling. Michael Strahan, ever the professional, opened with his usual warm welcome. "Good morning, Blake. Thanks for joining us today on Good Morning America. I know you've got a lot going on with your new album and The Voice coming back for another season." Blake nodded, clearly in his element. "Morning, Michael. Always good to be here. Yeah, we've got some exciting stuff happening. The new album's got some songs on it that I'm really proud of. And The Voice, man, we've got some incredible talent this season." "Speaking of The Voice," Michael continued, his tone still friendly but with a subtle shift that Blake didn't immediately pick up on. "There's been quite a bit of discussion lately about the coaching methods on the show. Some critics are saying that certain coaches, yourself included, might be playing favorites with contestants." Blake's smile faltered for just a moment, a flicker of confusion crossing his features. "I'm sorry, what now? Playing favorites? Michael, I've been on that show for over a decade. I think my track record speaks for itself." "Well, that's exactly what some people are questioning," Michael pressed on, leaning forward slightly. "Your track record. There have been allegations, Blake, that some of your wins weren't exactly, shall we say, on the level." The studio fell silent except for the hum of cameras and lighting equipment. Blake's jaw tightened visibly and he shifted in his chair. "Allegations from who exactly?" "Because that's a pretty serious thing to throw around on live television, Michael." "Multiple sources within the production," Michael replied smoothly, clearly having done his homework. "People who work closely with the show have come forward claiming that certain outcomes were predetermined, and that coaches knew in advance which contestants were expected to make it to the finals." Blake's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "That's complete garbage, and you know it. The Voice is a singing competition. The best singers win. Period. I don't know what kind of sources you think you have, but they're feeding you lies." "Are they, though?" Michael's voice remained calm, professional, but there was an edge to it now. "Because we've spoken to former contestants, Blake, contestants who were on your team, and they're telling us a very different story about how things really work behind the scenes." "Then bring them on here," Blake shot back, his famous Oklahoma drawl becoming more pronounced as his temper began to flare. "Put them right here in this chair and let them say it to my face instead of hiding behind anonymous allegations." Michael consulted his notes, a move that seemed calculated to increase the tension. "Actually, we did reach out to several former contestants. Interestingly, most declined to appear on camera. They cited concerns about potential legal ramifications and damage to their careers in the music industry." "Legal ramifications?" Blake's voice rose slightly. "Are you kidding me right now?" "There are no legal ramifications because there's nothing illegal going on. You're fishing, Michael, and you're doing it on live television with absolutely no proof of anything." The veteran host remained unflappable. "Well, let's talk about proof then. We've obtained some interesting documents. Blake, communications between producers and network executives that paint a very different picture of how The Voice operates." Blake's face was beginning to redden, and viewers could see him struggling to maintain his composure. "What documents? Show me these so-called documents, Michael. Right now. Put them up on screen and let's see exactly what you think you've got." "I'm not at liberty to share the specifics right now due to ongoing investigations," Michael replied. "But I can tell you that they detail conversations about storylines, about which coaches needed wins, about keeping the show competitive and entertaining rather than purely merit-based. Ongoing investigations? Blake's voice cracked slightly. What investigations? By who? You're sitting there throwing around accusations like confetti, but you won't show me any proof. You won't name your sources. And now you're talking about mysterious investigations that apparently nobody told me about. Michael leaned back slightly, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the growing tension. Blake, I understand this is uncomfortable, but these are legitimate questions that deserve answers. Your fans, the contestants who trusted you, the viewers who voted, they all deserve to know the truth about what really goes on behind the cameras. The truth? Blake's voice was getting louder now, and several crew members exchanged glances. The truth is that you've ambushed me on. Michael Strahan, to his credit, didn't back down. If anything, Blake's aggressive response seemed to energize him. Blake, I understand you're upset, but attacking the messenger isn't going to make these questions go away. The public has a right to know about potential manipulation in a show that relies on viewer votes and public trust. Public trust? Blake's laugh was bitter, almost manic. You want to talk about public trust? What about the trust that guests have when they come on this show? What about the trust that I had walking in here this morning thinking I was going to talk about music, not defend myself against some conspiracy theory you've cooked up? This isn't a conspiracy theory, Blake, Michael replied firmly. We have multiple sources, documentation, and a pattern of behavior that raises serious questions about the integrity of The Voice as a competition. Blake stood up abruptly, his chair rolling backward. The sudden movement caused several camera operators to adjust their positions, clearly not expecting this level of confrontation. Pattern of behavior? What pattern? Winning? Being successful? Helping my contestants achieve their dreams? If that's a pattern, then I'm guilty as charged. Sit down, Blake, Michael said calmly. We're live on television. Don't tell me to sit down, Blake shot back, his voice echoing through the studio. You ambush me with this garbage and then want to tell me how to react? I've been nothing but professional my entire career, and you're sitting there trying to destroy everything I've built based on what? Gossip from disgruntled employees? Michael's tone remained steady, but there was steel in his voice now. These aren't disgruntled employees, Blake. These are people who worked directly on the show, people who were in the room when decisions were made. They're describing a systematic effort to manipulate outcomes for the sake of ratings and storylines. Systematic effort? Blake's hands were clenched into fists at his sides. You're describing fraud, Michael. You're accusing me, the other coaches, the producers, the network, basically everyone involved with the show of committing fraud on national television. Do you understand what you're saying? I'm saying that the documents we've reviewed suggest that certain elements of the show may not be as authentic as viewers believe, Michael responded carefully. That some outcomes may have been influenced by factors other than pure talent and viewer votes. Blake began pacing behind his chair, his movements sharp and agitated. May have been, suggest? You're destroying my career with maybes and suggestions? Where I come from? You better have more than that before you start throwing around accusations like this. Blake, please sit back down so we can discuss this professionally. Michael tried again. Professionally? Blake whirled around to face him directly. There's nothing professional about this hit job you're pulling. You brought me here under false pretenses. You're making accusations you can't back up. And you're doing it all on live television where I can't properly defend myself because you won't show me what you claim to have. The tension in the studio was palpable. Crew members were shifting uncomfortably, and you could see the show's producers frantically discussing something off to the side. Michael, however, remained focused on his guest. I understand your frustration, Blake, but these are serious allegations that require serious answers. If The Voice has been manipulating results, don't you think the contestants who were eliminated unfairly deserve to know? Don't you think the viewers who spent their time and money voting deserve the truth? The truth? Blake's voice cracked with emotion. The truth is that every single contestant who's ever been on my team got my absolute best effort. The truth is that I've spent countless hours working with singers, helping them find their voice, pushing them to be better than they ever thought they could be. The truth is that wins and losses in that competition are based on talent, hard work, and how well the artists connect with America. But what if they're not, Blake? Michael pressed. What if some of those contestants never had a real chance because the outcome was already decided? What if their dreams were crushed not because they weren't good enough, but because it didn't fit the story the show wanted to tell? Blake stopped pacing and stared at Michael with an intensity that was almost frightening. You're talking about people's lives, Michael. Real people with real dreams. These aren't characters in some soap opera. They're human beings who trusted me to help them. And I never, not once, let them down. Then help us understand, Michael said, his voice softening slightly. If these allegations are false, if there's been some kind of misunderstanding, then help us get to the bottom of it. Cooperate with the investigation. Provide your side of the story with the same level of detail that these other sources have provided. My side of the story? Blake's laugh was hollow. My side of the story is 12 years of helping artists. 12 years of being part of something I believed was honest and real. My side of the story is going home every night knowing that I gave everything I had to help someone else achieve their dreams. But apparently that doesn't matter when you've got anonymous sources whispering in your ear. Michael leaned forward in his chair. Blake, if you're innocent of any wrongdoing, then you have nothing to worry about. The investigation will clear your name, and these questions will be answered. If I'm innocent? Blake's voice rose to almost a shout. If I'm innocent? Michael, you just proved exactly what this is about. In your mind, I'm already guilty. You've already decided that I'm some kind of criminal who's been manipulating a singing competition for over a decade. The country star's face was now completely red, and beads of sweat were visible. Michael's expression hardened at Blake's accusation. Blake, that's not fair and you know it. We invited you here to give you the opportunity to respond to these allegations. We're giving you a platform to tell your side of the story. My side of the story? Blake slammed his hand down on the back of his chair, the sharp sound echoing through the studio. You mean the side where I try to prove a negative? Where I try to prove that something didn't happen when you won't even tell me specifically what I'm supposed to have done? We've been very clear about the allegations, Michael responded firmly. Predetermined outcomes, coaching favoritism, manipulation of the voting process. These are specific claims that require specific responses. Blake's eyes blazed with fury. Specific claims? You haven't given me one specific example, Michael. Not one date, not one contest, not one instance where you can point to something concrete and say this is what Blake Shelton did wrong. You're dealing in generalities and innuendo, and you expect me to just sit here and take it? We're protecting ongoing investigations by not revealing specifics that could compromise the process, Michael replied. Surely you can understand that. Compromise the process? Blake's voice was now hoarse from shouting. What process? What investigation? You keep talking about this investigation like it's some official thing, but you won't tell me who's conducting it, what agency, what authority they have. For all I know, you made the whole thing up to justify this ambush. The studio fell silent except for Blake's heavy breathing. Michael consulted his notes again, a gesture that seemed to infuriate Blake even more. Don't you dare look at those notes again, Blake snapped. Look at me. Look me in the eye and tell me you believe I'm the kind of person who would cheat those kids out of their dreams. Look me in the eye and tell me you really think I've spent 12 years of my life perpetrating some kind of fraud. Michael met his gaze directly. I think you're someone who cares deeply about winning, Blake. I think you're competitive to your core. And I think that in a highly competitive environment like The Voice, lines can get blurred. People can convince themselves that what they're doing is for the greater good. Lines can get blurred. Blake's laugh was bitter and manic. That's what you think this is about? My competitive nature? Michael, every coach on that show is competitive. Every artist is competitive. That's what makes it a competition. But there's a difference between wanting to win and cheating to win. And where exactly is that line for you, Blake? Michael pressed. Because according to our sources, that line moved quite a bit over the years. Small compromises that turned into bigger ones, justifications that became habits. Blake's hands were shaking visibly now. Your sources are liars, Michael. They're people with axes to grind. People who probably got fired or passed over for promotions. They're feeding you garbage because they want to bring down something successful, something that's brought joy to millions of people. Or maybe they're people with consciences, Michael countered. Maybe they're people who couldn't stand by and watch the manipulation continue. Maybe they're the real heroes in this story. Heroes? Blake's voice cracked completely. Heroes? They're cowards who are hiding behind anonymity while they try to destroy innocent people. If they're such heroes, why won't they show their faces? Why won't they put their names behind their accusations? Michael leaned back slightly, maintaining his professional composure despite the escalating confrontation. Because they're afraid, Blake. They're afraid of exactly this kind of reaction. They're afraid of legal retaliation, career destruction, personal attacks. They've seen what happens to people who speak out against powerful figures in the entertainment industry. Powerful figures? Blake was practically screaming now. I'm a country singer from Oklahoma, Michael. I'm not some media mogul or political kingmaker. The only power I have is my voice and my guitar, and the trust that people have placed in me over the years. Trust that you're trying to destroy with this hit piece. Then help us restore that trust, Michael said quietly. Answer the questions honestly. Address the concerns that have been raised. Show America the Blake Shelton you say you really are. Blake stared at him for a long moment, his chest rising and falling rapidly. When he spoke again, his voice was dangerously quiet. You want to know who I really am, Michael? I'm someone who's given everything to help young artists. I'm someone who's celebrated their victories, like they were my own children. I'm someone who's cried with them when they've been eliminated, who stayed up all night helping them prepare for performances. His voice began to rise again. I'm someone who's donated millions of dollars to charity, who's used his platform to help people in need, who's never asked for anything in return except the opportunity to make music and help others do the same. But apparently none of that matters when you've got anonymous sources telling you fairy tales. Michael nodded slightly. That's exactly the Blake Shelton that America fell in love with. So help us understand how that person could be involved in the kind of systematic deception we're hearing about. Because it's not true, Blake exploded, his voice echoing off the studio walls. There is no systematic deception. There is no manipulation. There is no conspiracy. There's just a bunch of people who want to tear down something good because they can't stand to see others succeed. The country star was now visibly trembling, his face red with rage and his voice hoarse from yelling. You want to destroy my reputation, my career, my relationships, everything I've worked for, based on rumors and speculation. And you're doing it on live television where millions of people can watch you character assassinate. Michael remained calm in the face of Blake's outburst, but there was a steely determination in his eyes. Blake, I need you to calm down. We're still live, and millions of viewers are watching this conversation. Millions of viewers are watching you destroy an innocent man's life, Blake shot back, his voice raw and desperate. They're watching you conduct a public execution based on nothing but gossip and lies. Is this what journalism has become, Michael? Is this what Good Morning America stands for? Good Morning America stands for truth, Michael replied firmly. We stand for asking the hard questions that need to be asked, even when they're uncomfortable. Especially when they're uncomfortable. Blake's laugh was completely unhinged now. Truth? You wouldn't know truth if it walked up and introduced itself. You've taken a handful of disgruntled employees' complaints and turned them into some grand conspiracy theory. You've taken my success, my hard work, my dedication to helping young artists, and you've twisted it into something ugly and criminal. The show's producers were now frantically signaling from off-camera, clearly concerned about where this was heading. But Michael pressed on, his journalistic instincts overriding any concerns about the spectacle unfolding before him. Blake, I'm going to ask you one direct question, and I need you to give me a direct answer. Have you ever been told in advance which contestant was expected to win The Voice? The studio fell completely silent. Blake stood there, his whole body shaking, staring at Michael with a mixture of rage and disbelief. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely controlled. You want a direct answer? Here's your direct answer. No. Never. Not once in 12 years has anyone ever told me who was supposed to win. Not once has anyone ever suggested that I should favor one contestant over another for any reason other than their talent. Not once has anyone ever asked me to do anything that would compromise the integrity of that competition. And you're willing to state that unequivocally, on the record, knowing that there may be evidence to the contrary? Michael pressed. That was the final straw. Blake completely snapped. Evidence to the contrary? His voice was now a roar that seemed to shake the entire studio. What evidence? Show me the evidence, Michael. Right now. Put it up on screen. Let America see this smoking gun that you claim to have. Blake began moving toward Michael's desk, his movements erratic and threatening. You've been sitting there for 20 minutes talking about evidence and documents and investigations, but you haven't shown me one single piece of proof. Not one email, not one recording, not one document that proves anything you've been saying. Security personnel began moving closer to the set, clearly concerned about Blake's increasingly aggressive behavior. But the country star was beyond caring about appearances now. You know why you can't show me any evidence? Blake continued, his voice cracking with emotion. Because it doesn't exist. Because this whole thing is a setup. You brought me here to destroy me, and you're using lies and innuendo to do it. Michael remained seated, but his posture was tense. Blake, you need to step back and calm down. We can continue this conversation, but you need to control yourself. Control myself? Blake's eyes were wild now, filled with tears of rage and frustration. You ambush me on live television. You accuse me of fraud. You attack my character, my integrity, everything I stand for, and then you tell me to control myself? The country singer was now gesticulating wildly, his movements becoming more erratic by the second. I've spent my entire adult life building a reputation based on honesty, hard work, and helping others. I've never cheated at anything in my life. I've never lied to a fan, never betrayed a friend, never broken a promise to an artist who trusted me. His voice was now barely recognizable, hoarse and strained from shouting. But none of that matters to you, does it, Michael? None of that matters because you've got a story to tell, and you don't care who you destroy to tell it. Blake suddenly grabbed the microphone that was clipped to his shirt and threw it across the studio, where it hit a camera with a loud crash. The gesture was so unexpected and violent that several crew members jumped back in alarm. There's your story, Michael, Blake screamed, pointing at the broken microphone. There's your big confrontation. Blake Shelton loses his mind on Good Morning America because a so-called journalist decided to end his career based on rumors and lies. The studio was in complete chaos now. Producers were shouting instructions, security was moving in, and Michael was finally standing up from his chair, clearly concerned about his own safety. You want to know what really happened here today? Blake continued, his voice now so hoarse it was almost a whisper, but still filled with venom. What really happened is that you proved that journalism is dead. You proved that reputation, integrity, and truth don't matter anymore. All that matters is ratings and sensationalism. Blake's final words were delivered with such intensity that they seemed to echo through the studio long after he'd spoken them. I hope you're satisfied, Michael. I hope this gives you everything you wanted. Because you've just destroyed a good man's life on live television, and for what? For a story based on nothing but gossip and spite. With that, Blake Shelton stormed off the Good Morning America set, leaving behind a stunned studio, a shaken host, and millions of viewers who had just witnessed one of the most explosive confrontations in morning television history. The cameras continued rolling as Michael struggled to regain his composure and bring the show back under control, but the damage was done. America had just seen a beloved country star completely lose his mind on live television, and the aftermath would be felt for months to come. So what do you think really happened here? Was this an ambush interview gone wrong, or did Blake's explosive reaction reveal something deeper?